Hey guys, Chong here, and today I want to talk about misinformation. And I'm going to probably relate this back to how it affects the metagame, like my previous video. So, and I feel like this is a topic that's really under talked about, and it's rampant everywhere, not just in video games. Like if you want to learn anything about anything, like there's just going to be a just whole crap load of information that is out there that's just going to be false or suboptimal or 70% true or whatever. So I like to classify misinformation into two categories. There's non-purposeful misinformation and purposeful misinformation. So non-purposeful misinformation is going to represent the majority of misinformation. It's probably upwards of 90% of the misinformation that you're going to find, not just necessarily in regards to Guild Wars 2, but in general. So obviously this is going to be outdated or wrong information. An example of outdated information can be directly, referenced to Guild Wars 2 because there's so much information now that's out there that has changed from the beta weekends, from alpha testing, closed beta to these, beta weekends that, every time a beta weekend's done, like things about the game get changed, including how stats work and things, like that. So a great example of this is my attack video. I released an attack video maybe, like a month ago, and I had to take that attack video down and kind of revamp it because the information I was using was wrong and outdated. And even since then, even since I've released my new attack video, there's been more and more evidence showing that, the formula that I talked about at the end being potentially right isn't actually probably right. It's probably more of like a linear formula. So it's a great example. And if I didn't update that in the comments section and post my sources and things like that, then people could take that information and it could be detrimental to them. So, and I guarantee you, for every person that's updating their videos and updating their forum posts and constantly with as more information rolls in throughout the beta, there's probably 9 people that aren't doing that. So you really have to make sure that you're getting the right information. So an example of just some wrong information could be some guy like, oh hey, look at this awesome warrior spec, it's so great, it's the best warrior spec, bar none, awesome warrior spec. And like it's obviously not the best warrior spec bar none, but this person's just extremely confident, he loves his build, he owns some noobs in the beta weekend, and he just really wants to show his video off, man. And it's a great example of he's not doing it like on purpose, he really wants to release his video and just like but it's bad, it's a suboptimal build. So moving on to purposeful misinformation, and this is something that I think a lot of people don't think really happens, but speaking from experience and just I'll list some examples. Purposeful misinformation is kind of rampant at the top levels, and if you're not aware of it and how it affects the metagame, then you're at a severe disadvantage when you get to the top levels of any kind of video game or any kind of game in general. So purposeful misinformation, I feel like it's going to represent a small portion of misinformation. Probably less than 10%. It might even be less than like 2 or 3%, to be completely honest. And there's two kind of types that I like to talk about. And the first is going to be intentional outdated builds. And this isn't going to be like a super malicious thing that people are putting out there on purpose, but it's generally going to be like, oh, well, this team just dominated this tournament. So they're going to release and tell you exactly how they did it, exactly how all of their guardian spec, their warrior spec, how they did it, what skills they used. They're going to walk you right through that. And chances are, if they're releasing this information, they probably already have an updated build in mind, or they have counters to the strategy that they're releasing already. And because they want to maintain their competitive advantage, so why would they release their exact strategy that they're doing right now? All that's going to do is get them screwed in the end, if you understand what I'm saying. Like, based on just general, game theory, they're not going to do that. They're going to release, a sort of outdated build to kind of appease their fans or, appease the masses or whatever, without necessarily losing all of their competitive advantage by doing it. So intentional suboptimal strategies is going to be the second thing. And intentional suboptimal strategies can be, malicious or not malicious. A good example of like a not super malicious suboptimal strategy is going to be in the blockbuster smash game of the summer Diablo 3. um, there was quite a bit of people that released these demon hunter specs. They were like, oh my god, I do like 1,000,000 damage, and like the reason that they were doing it, like they had these, character sheet DPSs that were off the chart was because of this ability called Sharpshooter, which Sharpshooter was really, really good, up until like the very first patch when they kind of fixed some things about it. And at that point, when these people were releasing these, like, oh my god, I do so much damage, it's because people want to see, these big numbers, and they want to be noticed. So by having a crapload more, quote, DPS, then, they're going to get noticed more, when in reality, like, most people were replacing Sharpshooter at the top levels with Night Stalker to build more discipline on critical hits to make sure that they could just smokescreen through everything and just run through the game. And an example of a more malicious suboptimal strategy was I used to play a shitload of Magic the Gathering, and when you go to like Pro Tours and things like that, or most notably Nationals, a lot of these pros, they write articles for, sites like StarCityGames.com or something, and they'll put out an article and be like, well, this is like the best deck in the format right now, and this deck is awesome, and here's a list, and here's, how you play the deck, here's all the matchups, here's how you sideboard for these decks, things like that, if anyone's familiar with Magic. And do you think that these players honestly play these decks at the Pro Tour that they release, a week before the Pro Tour, a week before Nationals? No, they don't. They release these decks that they, quote, feel like they're the best deck in the format, and then they play a deck that beats that deck. So they're releasing information into the community to be like, oh, here's some more information. This is how you, this is the best deck in the format, or, this is the dominant strategy in, Forest. Like, and they turn around and they immediately counter that strategy, which relates back to the metagaming video of how, if you understand how the metagame is going to shape out, then you can make, better judgments, you can make better, decisions on how to beat those strategies. And especially if you know that when you release an article and you're one of the top Magic players, or you're one of the top poker players, and you say, oh, hey, you need to be 3-betting, this amount, from this, position, and then you just turn around, exactly, obviously, how to counter that. It's something that obviously affects the metagame, and there's people that know what they're doing, and there's people that don't know what they're doing, and this is a great example of people that know exactly what they're doing, and they're doing it to gain a competitive advantage. So what are some ways that we can kind of combat misinformation? So we need to make sure that we're filtering and researching, which means, like when you find, information, obviously you want to double check. Is there a source? And if it's an original source, you need to make sure that you're testing the source in-game. Don't necessarily take everyone's word for it. Like, oh, good job, thanks, yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, because this is the way that, suboptimal strategies get adapted. Like Sharpshooter. There's so many, demon hunters that were using Sharpshooter when honestly it was kind of a suboptimal build for a couple patches. So, which leads me to utilizing misinformation to your advantage. So you have to understand that misinformation is everywhere in the game. And if you understand that and understand how it applies to the metagame, you're going to be able to utilize misinformation to your advantage, because it is here to stay in everything in life. Guess what? Information is not perfect out there, and you're going to have to filter to find the best information. And obviously there's great communities, like Reddit, or, like things like Wikipedia, that will help you gain information. But you have to understand that misinformation out there, and you need to use it to your advantage. Alright, so there's a typo here. So it says, one must understand that popular information, accurate or suboptimal or not, whatever. Information, period. Popular information is going to affect the metagame. So one, obviously knows and can concede that players are going to make suboptimal and imperfect plays in the game. Be it not dodging when they're supposed to, just randomly making a suboptimal spec, things like that. People are making imperfect plays in a video game, and that's what, leads certain people to be more skilled than others. But since we understand that obviously players are also going to make suboptimal decisions in regards to how they listen and filter information, which is a key point here. Like, people don't know how to find information, and they'll listen to suboptimal information if they feel like it's popular. It's going to happen, and that's not obviously just a video game thing. That's in general. That's how people think. So knowing this, we can generalize that the most popular information is most likely the most used information. And that's not going to be like necessary for everything, but the majority of things that you're applying this to, that's how it works. Um, so even people that aren't actively using the internet for Guild Wars 2 information, like people that are just like casual Guild Wars 2 people, are eventually going to use, like utilize this information, even if it's wrong information or whatever, because they're gonna like, they're gonna their friend's gonna tell them, and like everyone probably has a friend who like looks for strategies on the internet and like tells them what to do, or just mimicking someone that owned them in game. So if the majority of people are adopting and accepting the most popular information, one can infer the effects of the information on the metagame and then utilize that to create counters, etc. So just like the example of, the Magic player that released a deck that he said was the best deck, turn around and played a deck that directly countered that deck, you can take this misinformation that people are releasing or people are believing and directly tie it into like the metagame, and you can create counters based on that to, to dominate the metagame. Because misinformation is here to stay. Popular information is most likely the most adopted information. And if you just understand that and you're aware of that and you're actively thinking about everything that you read, not just taking it at face value and being like, oh, 100 Blades Eviscerate is awesome. When you see that information, you don't immediately just go, oh, 100 Blades Eviscerate is awesome, I gotta go beat the crap out of people. You think, oh, 100 Blades Eviscerate is the most popular strategy. What do I do to beat that? And that's the most important thing. And that's how it ties directly back in to the metagame video that I released yesterday. So, I really hope that this kind of helps you understand that misinformation is out there, and you have to be more aware of misinformation. It happens to everyone. Even the top level people can be releasing non-purposeful or purposeful misinformation in a malicious or non-malicious way. I've released some misinformation and had to go back and kind of talk more about the things that I've released or change videos, and it's something that's out there, especially in the early stages of Guild Wars 2. So if you understand that the most popular information is the most utilized information, you will be already a step ahead of the majority of people, honestly, in the world. So, yeah, I hope you liked this, and I hope you learned something. If you did, please follow my Twitter or follow my Twitch stream, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and let me know what you thought about the video. Alright, appreciate it.